Happy New Year and welcome back to Inside the Game with CNHI Sports. I'm George Bremer of CNHI Sports Indiana, and as we do every week, we're going to hit some of the biggest headlines around the country. Our first stop is in Boston and the NFL with Bill Burt. Now it's time for our weekly spot with Bill Burt. And Bill, week 17, some years it's kind of a dull week. Everything's kind of clinched. This year, still quite a bit up for grabs. We've got 5 teams fighting for 4 spots in the AFC, 3 teams fighting for 2 spots in the NFC. What's your best guess right now of those 5 AFC teams that are 10-5? Which one of them is going to become the first 10-win team, or maybe 11-win team, but the first 10-win team since Chicago in 2012 not to make the playoffs is guaranteed? Which one of those do you think will befall that fate?
Sorry to say, in the AFC, my favorite, one of my favorite teams this year, the Indianapolis Colts. It doesn't look good. And it's crazy because a few weeks ago it didn't look great for Baltimore. In retrospect, if you looked at their schedule, but I just think it's going to be. What happens is, and this is the new normal in the NFL. Everything you need to happen, you're usually begging for the backup quarterback who's replacing the starting quarterback to win. And I think the best option would be Houston, maybe beating Tennessee. Again, Tennessee's become the team I thought they were. The fire and brimstone thing, I didn't fall for it. But look, they got a quarterback who is one of the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the league. He's got a lot of pride. That would mean a lot for them to win because it's been a disaster there. So I honestly don't. I just think it's going to be tough for the Colts, and it's too bad because I think, as crazy it is, I think, and I said this to you before, the Colts and the Ravens could go to the Super Bowl, and that's the kind of year it is.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think the most remarkable thing to me, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, no team has missed the playoffs with 10 wins since 2012, and the Chicago Bears that year. I believe Lovie Smith got fired that season. Only twice in NFL history has an 11-win team not gotten into the postseason. You covered one of those, New England in 2008. The other one, the Denver Broncos in 1985. We are guaranteed a 10-win AFC team will not be in the playoffs. That's known going in. There is a decent chance, as you just detailed, that Indianapolis will be the third 11-win team not to make the playoffs. How surprising is that in a year where there was an additional berth? I mean, I remember we were all up in arms. You can't put 7 teams in each conference in the playoffs, and now the AFC is going to have at least a 10-win team sitting at home.
It is surprising, but like we've been talking here for 2 or 3 weeks, and this was all playing out exactly this way. So it's not like what happens is you say, oh, the travesty, we had 11 wins, and you knew that 2 weeks ago. And you sort of knew you had to win on week 16, and I'm talking about the Colts. And I don't want to say laid an egg, but had chances. And so the crazy part is you go to the NFC and you're going to get you got a 6-9, 6-10 team potentially 7-9 maybe making the playoffs. And then you're going to have an 11-5 team possibly in the AFC not making the playoffs. That's how crazy it is. But the balance of this, and I go back to when I covered the Patriots in 2008, that was not a great Patriots team. They won 11 games, but it was not a great Patriots team. And what we're seeing in the NFL is there are a lot of, I don't want to use the proper word on a family program here, but they're not very good teams. There's a lot of bad football teams. And that's why the records are, I think, are the Colts a 12-4, an 11-4, 11-5 team in a normal, really good season? No, probably a 10-6 team, which is good enough to make the playoffs, probably. So it's great. There's a lot of, like I said, it's crazy because the 8th best team could have won a Super Bowl, and I'll go. I've been saying it all year because I think the Colts are good because they're balanced and they're as crazy as they're. I'm not saying they're but they're way more consistent than Tennessee has been. And, Cleveland has sort of fallen off the map. Cleveland's going to basically fall into a playoff spot, I believe. And so it's tough. It's tough because, look, this has been a difficult year for everyone. but fans especially. And this would have been a nice chit for the fans of the Colts to make the playoffs. And you like this. The issue is you want to make the playoffs to build for the next year, because you're potentially building for something that's really good. And that's what the Colts could be if they figure out their quarterback situation. So that for me is really what's striking, because this year the Colts could have not only made the playoffs, but they could have gone far. I believe. I believe they could have beaten Kansas City, or go in as a 7th seed, and you can beat who Buffalo. Well, I will say right now it seems like Buffalo's the scary team, but Buffalo's never won a playoff game. So this Buffalo team, which is very good, gotten better, as we've seen with Baltimore last 2 years, it looks good on paper. It looks good in the regular season, but in January, and Frank Reich's got a little magic in January as a player and as a coach. So that's if there's a travesty in the league, it's to Indianapolis.
Yeah, I was joking with Coach Reich earlier this week. I asked him if he had any favors he could call in Buffalo, get the Bills to give him a little bit of a hand here. That's one of the teams they would need to win to get in. For the AFC, just to lay out that picture, the win in scenario, Miami plays at Buffalo. We don't think the Bills will play their starters.
Nope.
Hasn't been officially said yet. Cleveland plays at Pittsburgh. Steelers have already said Ben Roethlisberger's resting this week. Baltimore plays at Cincinnati. If the Ravens don't win that game, they don't deserve to be in the playoffs, to be quite frank. And then Houston, it hosts Tennessee. The Texans, J.J. Watt had that big speech, angry about this team not having enough fire. We'll see if that pays any dividends. I agree with you. I think the thing that really matters there is Deshaun Watson. He's one of the top players in the league. He always has a chance to change a game. They've got a chance to have a real big impact here, decide who wins the AFC South. The Colts are hurting, though. They played that game against Pittsburgh without both starting tackles. Braden Smith was a victim of the COVID-19 close contact situation. And now they're not going to have Anthony Costanza for the rest of the year. That was the big breaking news on Wednesday out of Indianapolis. Their left tackle has an ankle injury. He's going to undergo a surgery. He's done for the year. So they're, I think even if they get in the playoffs, they're going to be shorthanded. Cleveland's kind of the same way. They've been racked with coronavirus problems. That's why they lost to the Jets last week. One of those teams is going to get in and probably not be at full strength. On the NFC side, you've got a Cardinals-Rams game that's essentially a playoff game after the Cardinals lost last week to the 49ers. And the Bears have to play their biggest rival, the Packers. The Bears win, they're in. If the Bears lose and Arizona loses, the Bears are in. Who do you think of those three teams, who do you think gets in the NFC?
First of all three teams don't deserve to be in the playoffs. I mean, the Colts deserve to be in more than all three of those teams. I don't trust any of those teams. I saw that, I covered the Arizona Patriots game. Patriots just controlled that game from start to finish, and we see what the Patriots are. The Rams look good against the Patriots, but that was coming after 4 days and a 10-day trip out there in Los Angeles, or at least they're out there more than a week. And so the way it looks right now, I will say probably, unfortunately, it looks like Arizona is, they win, they're in probably. Chicago is interesting because they're playing better, and what they're doing is, and Mitch Trubisky's teasing everyone because his contract's up. He's a free agent. 8 weeks ago we said it's over. Now, is he pretty good? Now you're gonna have to pay him because he's, I'm not sure you have to pay him a lot, but he's not coming for $3 or $4 million. It's going to be more of a 15 to 20, and you've already given up on him, but you've now accepted back. So I don't know. If you ask me, Cardinals I think are going to win. The Bears probably win too, which is crazy. I'm the Rams, very disappointed in them. There's a couple teams I really have a trouble getting a grasp for, and the Rams are one of them. It's been 2 years now, and I'm down on them. They really took a tumble after the Super Bowl season with the Patriots. We thought that was a lot of us thought this McVay was, we had him up there with Belichick, and they got arguably one of the best corners in the league, and Jalen Ramsey. They added him to the roster, and he's not really making a difference. I think Goff probably is the real problem there. But I'm down on that. I'm down on that whole conference from the middle on down. At the top, very good.
No, I agree. And when we talk about teams that are banged up heading into the postseason, the Rams right at the top of the list. Jared Goff has a thumb injury. He's not going to play Sunday. Cooper Kupp, one of their top receivers, out for Sunday as well. I think from a fan standpoint, it would probably be the most fun to see Kyler Murray get in there and see what he can do on the postseason stage. Arizona's got a lot of issues. Even Murray's hurt, but he's a fun guy to watch.
Yeah, so I agree. So Kyler's fun to watch, but he has still, and I hate to sound crass, but he hasn't done anything yet. Now, and so I'm not gonna. Here's my problem, and I've been around now. This is 30 years covering the NFL. The one thing I see is anointing teams and people within a couple of weeks and or a year. And, you got to win some playoff games. And we've learned that here in New England. I'm careful. Personally, I think Kyler Murray could be a great player. Could be. I think the quarterback in Buffalo looked great on Monday night. Could be a great player. But I'm not ready. I'm not ready yet to rubber stamp that.
No, I agree. You got to do it. And you got to do it in the games that really matter. So we'll see. By the end of the weekend, we'll have a good idea of what this playoff field looks like.
I hope so.
The 6 wild card games this year.
Yeah, look, I understand what the NFL is doing. Next year, they are adding that 17th game. That's just about going to be announced soon officially. And look, more the better. Yeah, I guess. I just don't like the 6 and 10, 7 and 9 stuff. I don't like 11 and 5 teams not making the playoffs. When an 8 and 8 team, they sort of got to figure out that division thing. Just because you win the division, should you host a game? I don't know. I understand the rule. I do understand it, but the reason is it gives you something to play for. First goal, win your division, you get to host a playoff game. I get that, but this NFC East is bad, and I don't see it getting much better next year either.
It's in a rough spot. We looked for a while like Washington and the Giants maybe had a chance to start coming on, but both of them lost that momentum. It's going to be – Dallas might sneak in. Yeah. There's still a way for that to happen.
So here's the deal. I'm rooting for the Houston Texans. I'm going to help you out.
I will say this. If I have to put my money on Deshaun Watson, just in general, I'm feeling pretty good. That kid deserves more than he's gotten so far from that franchise.
Hey, look, I will say this: the Titans could lose that game. That's the way they're playing. I thought they were going to give Green Bay a tough game. I've been wrong. I'm not saying I thought they were going to win, but I thought they'd give them a tough game. I thought the Patriots were going to give the Bills a tough game. That's a whole separate issue. The New England Patriots and the disastrous way this season ended, and it's gotten embarrassing. I guess after 2 decades, the ending is embarrassing. They go from winning 45-0 over the Chargers and making Herbert look like an unproven rookie to scoring the next 3 games 1 touchdown combined. I personally think the Patriots are going to lose to the Jets this week. I think the Jets are coming to New England with all guns blaring.
Jets are on fire all of a sudden. They can't move anymore either. They're locked into the 2 seed, so there's no downside to the Jets for winning this week.
And one thing going forward, that's where ending a season strong. There's a history of that. I'm not saying that happens all the time, but winning 3 or 4 in a row. Miami did it last year. I think got strong at the end of the season, and another team. Miami really wants that playoff experience. No one expects them to go far, but they get a playoff this year. That's going to mean a lot to them. That's why the AFC for the Patriots is going to be tough going forward. This is not going to be a quick fix for New England. Maybe we'll talk about that soon.
Oh, absolutely. And, one thing we didn't talk about, we're running out of time now, but Ryan Fitzpatrick, again, with one of those magic plays, face mask, basically his head being pulled off, completes a long pass, sets up that winning touchdown. A miracle win for Miami. Maybe it's their year. I know there's a lot still to come. It's going to be a busy weekend, Bill. We'll talk to you next week. We'll have a playoff field set.
Go Colts and Texans.
Thanks, as always, to Bill for his time. You can follow his New England Patriots coverage at Burt Talk Sports. You can follow my Indianapolis Colts coverage at GM Bremer. Now let's check in on the Big Ten with Elton Hayes and Kevin Brockway. Time to check in now in the Big Ten with Elton Hayes of CNHI Pennsylvania and Kevin Brockway of CNHI Sports Indiana. And guys, football season finally wrapping up. Kevin, I know you got a big one, Indiana on January 2nd, Saturday, going up against Ole Miss. I know it's not the game the Hoosiers wanted, but they haven't won a bowl game since 1991. What's the feeling in the program, and how's this matchup look to you?
Well, I think it sets up as a great opportunity for Indiana, and particularly because when you look on the Ole Miss side, I mean, this is a team that defensively has been a sieve for most of the season, and two of their best offensive players, Elijah Moore and Kenny Yeboah, a wide receiver and a tight end, are out. I think Indiana will be a little motivated. They'll have a little chip on their shoulder based on that whole New Year's Six snub and even being snubbed a little bit for the Citrus Bowl by Northwestern. So I think this is based on talking to the players this week, this is a hungry group. I mean, I think the only concern on the Indiana side would be they've had this long layoff due to COVID, and you still don't know how full strength they're going to be back for this game, or if the lack of practice and workout time will impact them. And you've got the backup Jack Tuttle making his second career start. But Freifogel will certainly be motivated. He's a senior receiver, Big Ten Receiver of the Year from the state of Mississippi, has friends on the other side of the field, and could have easily gone to Ole Miss had Grant Hurd not changed sides and changed from Ole Miss receivers coach to Indiana coach back in 2017. So a lot of good storylines. Also a lot of kids from the Tampa area too that from Indiana that'll get to play in front of their families, and there will be fans, even 17,000, 20% capacity for the game.
First time IU's playing in front of fans this year? Or did they have another game?
Well, I mean, first time in front of, other than family and friends. I mean, first time in front of a major crowd. Every Big Ten game they've had, some fans per se, but not to this extent.
Elton, Penn State obviously opted out. They're not going to play in a bowl game. The Big Ten in general had a lot of that going on. Even teams that didn't opt out ended up involuntarily opting out. I know Iowa's game got canceled, for instance. The one game probably everybody's eyes are on outside of the IU game, Ohio State playing on Friday night against Clemson. What do you make of Dabo Swinney in the run-up to this contest? Most of the time, coaches are very, very guarded. He's been pretty open about his thought that Ohio State does not belong in this playoff field.
Dabo is the mouth of the South. He's got an opinion on everything, and he's not afraid to share that opinion. If you're Ryan Day, that's free bulletin board material. I'm not sure you really need any more after losing a 4-point game to Clemson last year, and the fact that Clemson is 4-0 in games against Ohio State. One of the questions that Ohio State's had all season long, and I kind of saw it a little bit when Ohio State came here on Halloween and played Penn State, was the defense is not what it used to be. Pass defense, Sean Wade is a good corner, but, he has been exploited a few times this year. And one team that you do not want to have that weakness going in against is Clemson. You've got arguably the best quarterback in college football right now in Trevor Lawrence. He's seen it all. He's had experience. He's been on this stage, and, he's going to go out there, and if he leaves this year, this will be his last chance to win a national championship, and he has to go through Ohio State to get there. One thing that Ohio State, which Ohio State team do we get? They only played 6 games this season, including the conference championship, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of COVID issues as the season progressed. Is everyone going to be healthy? What shape will they be in? One thing that we've heard of people talking about is just some of the after effects of the guys who have had COVID, difficulty breathing, getting that wind back up. So in a traditional season, I'd say this game would obviously be the marquee one of the semifinals. But, with Ohio State coming in with a lack of experience, some players still trying to, return from COVID, suffering from COVID. Dabo is, like I said, he's got a lot to say, and I'm sure he'll be running his mouth about Alabama, come Friday night.
That might be a little more dangerous. You might want to be a little more careful with that one. Kevin, looking at the Ohio State offense, Justin Fields threw a couple of interceptions in the Big Ten championship game against Northwestern. I know there were talk of him having a thumb injury. I'm not sure where he's going to be at. He's not among the Heisman finalists. Before the season started, before the Big Ten season even got canceled and reopened again, he was a guy who was talked about for that award. How concerned should Ohio State be about the play of their quarterback right now?
Exactly. I think he's taken a step back this year in some of his decision making. I mean, don't forget he threw much fewer interceptions in more games this year. And I saw in the Indiana game, trying to force throws that weren't there. But he's still a dangerous threat with his legs. We know that. We know he can scramble very similar to Trevor Lawrence. He is a dual threat guy. So I think for Ohio State to have some success, I mean, they're going to have to do it a little bit on the ground. And don't forget the other issue, too, with the Ohio State offense against Northwestern. Not having Chris Olave, I think, really hurt the passing game. And I think having him back, might be able to help a little bit in that Clemson match.
Elton, it's not directly connected, but I do wonder, you watch a Penn State team that struggled mightily early in this season, turned it around, finished strong. Is there any kind of thought that I don't want to say could be expected this year, but do you think Ohio State could do some similar things? Could we see a different looking team, much the way Penn State was able to, just because they do have some games under their belts now?
I think so. Like Ohio State going into that game against Northwestern, I believe had two games canceled this season because of COVID. So it's like every time Ohio State tried to get into a groove, it had to be sidelined and just kind of had to just sit around and be cold while everyone else was playing. I think that, like Kevin was mentioning, getting a guy like Chris Olave back into the lineup, I think we will see an improved Ohio State team against Clemson on Friday. I just don't know if it's going to be too little too late, just given the level of talent that Clemson possesses.
And don't forget, Ohio State's got a really strong offensive line, too. 3 first Big Ten guys. So I think there's an ability to run the football a little bit here, whether it's with Fields, whether it's with Master Teague, whether it's with Sermon, who had over 300 yards in that game against Northwestern. I think they, if you could establish a run and keep Trevor Lawrence off the field a little bit, you might have a chance, particularly to help out that defense, which is, had its holes this year for Ohio State.
For sure.
I mean, you're in a unique spot kind of to break down the Alabama-Notre Dame game. Obviously spent years covering Florida in the SEC. You know that Alabama program very well. And then you've been in Indiana the last couple of years, been around Notre Dame a little bit. What does that matchup look like to you?
Well, let's begin by addressing him as Coach Saban, right? We can't call him Nick, according to a certain sportscaster in the state of Alabama, or Nick. Maybe we can call him. Maybe I can call him Nick, right? But it's a machine there. Let's put it that way. I mean, plain and simple. They get talent every year. It looks like for the first time in a long time, a wide receiver could win the Heisman Trophy in Devontae Smith, and you got Najee Harris too, and you have Mac Jones. I mean, it's a terrific offense. I mean, this is an Alabama team, though. It's kind of similar to Ohio State. They do have some holes defensively that can be exploited. I just don't know if a team like Notre Dame has the firepower to do it. Now, maybe Clemson in the championship game, you might see that. But I think Alabama is in a pretty good line to at least, make it to the final game on January 11th.
Elton, 3 Alabama players among the top 5 Heisman finalists. Obviously, the quarterback, Mac Jones. Devontae Smith, as Kevin mentioned, the likely front runner right now, the wide receiver. Najee Harris finished 5th, their running back. How do you prepare for an offense like this?
I don't think you can. I think you kind of just, you're not going to contain it. Or you're not going to slow it. You just got to kind of hope to contain it. So you neutralize a guy like Devontae Smith, but then they can turn it to the ground game with Najee Harris. Neutralize him. They can get Smith involved. Devontae Smith involved. It's really, you just pray for the expect the worst and pray for the best when you're with that type of talent. I mean, 3 guys, who are among the Heisman finalists. I believe I read yesterday that they had 3 All-Americans, AP All-Americans at quarterback, receiver, and running back for the first time in Lord knows how many years. So it's really special what they've been able to do. It seems like every year we kind of see this theme with Alabama. It's just plug and play. But each of those 3 guys are extremely talented in their own right, and they're the front runners for a reason to win the national championship.
I think you just have to try to outscore them, just maybe, force some turnovers. Florida came close to doing that. I think a team like Clemson, maybe can't.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. We always talk about Alabama being a juggernaut. It feels like this offense in particular is really, really special. Flipping to the other side of the other sport going on right now in basketball, Kevin, you saw Northwestern up close and personal recently. Are the Wildcats for real? I think they're 3-1, off to a start last year, one of the worst teams in the country. Are they going to contend in the Big Ten this year?
They have a certain belief about him. They've got a scrappiness about him. I think Boo Buie, the point guard, the sophomore, is a really nice player. And I don't know if you can expect Chase Audige to turn into Michael Jordan every game like he did against Indiana and score 13 straight points down the stretch. But I think that, if you have different guys to step up every night, I mean, Miller Kopp is, an experienced player in the league. They've got a little bit of physicality up front as well. Ryan Young came in that game, gave Indiana a lot of problems on the boards a little bit. So we'll see. I mean, this league is such a bear, though. I think it's week to week. Michigan State's 0-3. You can't expect them to stay down that long. There's so much topsy-turviness right now. Rutgers, they lost Ron Harper Jr., who looked like the best player in the league, but they still found a way to be produced. So it's just going to be a grind of a league. And, we know tonight Indiana is facing Penn State, and those are two winless teams in the league, both desperately kind of seeking a win here to, just try to keep pace with some of these teams throughout the league.
That's what I was going to ask Elton about that very thing. IU and Penn State both starting off 0-2. Result of that game will be known by the time people are watching this. But nonetheless, when you are off to that kind of a slow start in a conference this slow, how big of a concern is that?
It is. You don't want to get left behind. I mean, like Kevin mentioned, everyone in the conference is pulling their weight. Minnesota is in the top 25 for the first time in some years. They look dominant. They beat Iowa. Was it last weekend? But yeah, if you're Penn State or Indiana right now, you don't want this thing to snowball before it gets too late because the margin of error is very slim. Penn State has shown it has some ability. It's just inconsistent. It played consistent basketball against Virginia Tech a few weeks ago when it knocked off the number 15th ranked team by 20 points. Then it kind of slowed against Michigan. Michigan beat them. And then last week was the first game I actually covered. Illinois came to town, and Penn State had a double-digit lead in the first half, was leading at halftime, and then Illinois, Kofi Coburn, and Ayo Dosunmu just did their thing and ended up winning by double-digit point totals. So, it's going to be interesting to see if Penn State can play two full halves of basketball and sustain the good and weather the bad. If not, it's going to be a long season.
Yeah, and Minnesota and Northwestern, two teams that are off the surprise starts. Common denominator, good point guard play. Marcus Carr and Boo Buie, and that's something right now that Indiana is lacking.
And Penn State as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the basketball season just heating up. I'm sure we're gonna get even more into that as we go along. Football wrapping up. A really fun time right now in the Big Ten. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about when we see you guys again next week.
All right. Happy New Year, you all.
All right, thank you. Happy
New Year, guys. Thanks again to Elton and Kevin. You can check out Elton's coverage of the Penn State Nittany Lions at EHDC12. You can follow Kevin and the Indiana Hoosiers at Kevin Brockway G1. Now let's get a national perspective and check in with Clay Horning out in Oklahoma. Now we're checking in with Clay Horning of CNHI Sports Oklahoma. And Clay, another week, unfortunately, where we've lost a longtime baseball legend, Phil Niekro, passing away. Unfortunately, been kind of a theme this year with Major League Baseball.
But it's I'll tell you what, when these things happen, and I can't describe, and I wonder if people who are listening to this, I don't know if they have a way of reaching us, but you can find me on Twitter, whatever. And I'd love to know what it is I'm about to describe about baseball. I mean, I'd rather sit through an NBA game than 9 innings of baseball. I'd rather watch a hockey game than anything else. By the way, like the one sport I've never covered. But it's like, but if you lose baseball, it feels like you lose yourself. I mean, football seems to take over the world every year during the NFL season, but I feel like if it went away, it's just football. But baseball went away. That is baseball in my head, and I just devoured baseball cards as a kid, and I still have my cards. But anyway, Phil Niekro dies, and I was a Braves guy on the Superstation watching them, watching Joe Torre manage the Braves before Bobby Cox managed the Braves, and well, anyway, let me tell you some things about Phil Niekro. It will blow your freaking mind. Well, first of all, he's 5th all times in innings pitched with 5,404, which is more than Nolan Ryan, less than Walter Johnson. Amazing that Walter Johnson and Nolan Ryan are number 3 and 5 on that list. They're both power pitchers. But from 1968 to 1980, he went 216 and 184. He started 483 games. He completed 207 of them in 13 seasons.
It's unheard of now.
He averaged 284 innings for 13 seasons. And the last time somebody threw more than 284 in a season was Jack Morris in 1983. He averaged for 13 seasons what one guy has done since in one season 27 years ago.
It's incredible.
That's just insane.
You wouldn't give a ticker tape parade right now to pitchers to get through the 7th inning.
I know. I mean, one year he started 44 games, more than a fourth of his team games. One year, I think it was 79. 79. He leads the league in wins and losses. He's 21-20. And his lifetime earned run average, 3.35. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, he did it forever. He won more than 300 games, and in his 300th win, he was a Yankee, and the great Joe Posnanski, who I will tell people is the best sports writer of my lifetime, even though he's only about a year or two older than me, who writes for The Athletic, but you should have read him at the Kansas City Star 15, 20 years ago. But well, he's writing this great series, or wrote this series about the 100 greatest players. Now he's writing this. Anyway, when he wrote about Niekro, he charted his 300th win. And Niekro was a knuckleballer. One of the reasons he could throw so many innings. But in his 300th win, he threw 2 knuckleballs in the 9th inning. He pitched the whole game. He didn't want to use his best pitch because he wanted to prove to himself, and I think it was the last day of the season. Incredible. Another factoid, his brother Joe was also a knuckleballer in the major leagues. Joe Niekro hit 1 home run his entire career. He hit it off his brother Phil. Phil, by the way, hit 7. None of them, as far as I know, were off Joe. But anyway, it's just mind blowing. And I mean, I did not know that Jack. I mean, I'm really impressed that Jack Morris threw 290 innings in '83. I was one of those doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame guys on Jack Morris. Do you just throw him in because he pitched a 10-inning shutout against the Braves because Lonnie Smith lost the ball in the roof? But it still bothers me. But anyway, it's these old baseball players. You go back, look at their numbers. It's just amazing stuff, and it's sort of I can't just but so many of us, I think, 45 years old to 60-year-old people in life just grew up on baseball and baseball cards and everything. I noticed like an hour-long doc on Major League MLB Network on Reggie Jackson. I couldn't turn away from it. Reggie Jackson, I submit to you, was a bigger star in athletics in this country than any football player is right now. And anyway, I don't know. I don't mean to make this a nostalgia tour, but it wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't, but I think when you see someone like Phil Niekro pass and you throw out some of those numbers and you realize, it's a one-of-a-kind athlete, at least in terms of we're not going to see anyone like him again.
That's right. Well, you think I think you're right, but I started thinking about that. Like, if Blake Snell, who's now a Padre, if Blake Snell cannot throw into the 7th inning because we're risking his arm, could he pitch every 4th day and not every 5th? I mean, could we do something? It seems like if at an organizational level, I mean, given the way people study the game And I've looked up a couple things, but they're not within the last 5 years. But I mean, I believe you can make a case, although I wish somebody would do it for me, that pitchers were no more fragile in the age of the 4-man rotation than they are in the age of the 5-man rotation. And given the pitch counts and innings counts and everything, that they seem to not be taxing their arms, even in their starts. Well, certainly not like they used to. I mean, if the way we expect pitchers to be starting pitchers now, it seems like you could entertain a 4-man rotation again.
Absolutely.
And the hard thing about the death of the 4-man rotation is it just makes it awfully hard to win 20 games. And not that pitcher wins even mean anything. We finally understand that now too. But that 20 was a big number. I mean, it's still, and if somebody wins 20 still, it's sort of a lark, but it's really cool. Yeah.
It stands out a lot now, especially last year when they only played 60. But that kind of segues into our other point here today. Depending on when you're watching this video, it's either the last one of 2020 or the first one of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Good time to wrap up maybe the strangest year in sports.
It usually is. It's like I'm pretty sure. Okay, Wimbledon wasn't played. The U.S. Open was. I can't remember who won. It's like that. And as I get older, that stuff becomes harder for me. But anyway, I feel like for most of my life, I could tell you who won the 4 tennis majors, who won the 4 golf majors, who won the Stanley Cup, the NBA championship, the World Series. And I know Tampa Bay won the Stanley Cup, and I know that who just won the Dodgers just won the World Series. And let's see. And the Lakers just won but I've got to think about it. It's hard, and it is strange. And like I'm covering remotely. We'll have one person in the stadium tonight at Jerry's World, the Cotton Bowl. And I'm looking forward to that game. Looking forward to see how OU finishes the season. There's a narrative. They've been terrific. But it's like the only narrative I'm sort of aware of. It's like there's been no week, I don't think, where you're like, oh, it's Michigan Ohio State week, or it's whatever. I mean, because you don't even know if the game's going to be played, and it likely isn't where it typically is on the calendar, even if it is going to be played. And so it's just been so weird and crazy. And I don't know. I'll be interested to see how big a sports fan I am on the back end of everything, when we now have the freedom to sort of give the luxury. I mean, it's a luxury that we get to concentrate on sports anyway. Go back to a world where we can think about frivolous things more than we think about serious things. And will we? I don't know. It's going to be very interesting, but. I am going to buy myself the NHL season package and see if I can make myself watch hockey.
You talk about things being moved around on the calendar, and the Masters in November really stands out to me. That was just extraordinarily strange. But then here in Indiana, obviously, the Indianapolis 500, the month of May, almost a hollowed thing here in this state, and it happens in August. It felt like it was the Indianapolis 500 at all. That was sports in general. I guess you got – when you're trying to remember who won a championship, you've got a 50-50 chance if you pick a Tampa Bay team or an LA team.
Well, I guess that's true. And I would say that I think the NBA made itself the most relevant thing going. I think what it did with social justice and the stands it took. Even saying that seems like it's a political statement. I don't mean, to get in this political place, but I mean, count me among one who admires those kinds of stances. And so anyway, I think they really responded, and the NHL even did too. That they stopped what they were doing, and even though they were playing in Canada. So I mean, you have to give both leagues an immense amount of credit for creating something that was sort of exciting and went off with pretty much without a hitch. And I think it's also interesting that almost because they were living in that bubble together, they were able to have solidarity amongst each other and make a statement about racial justice and social justice and so on and so forth in a way that probably they would have struggled to do otherwise. And I do wonder, unfortunately, it's not like we don't see. There have been some police shootings, questionable since, and I don't know that you can stop the sports world every time, or I don't know if that's feasible. I don't know if it should happen. I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see, because I do think they mean to make a difference, not just while they were in the bubble, but I mean all the time. So maybe we just won't have as much to protest, perhaps. Maybe we'll get lucky and people will quit shooting unarmed people.
I think we're all for that. I think that would be a good thing to see. I think the bubble was a very unique moment in time with everybody there. I miss the bubble now too, because I miss the relative certainty. At least you knew those hockey games, NBA games, there was like a 99% chance they were going to go off. We obviously don't have anywhere near that certainty without it. It is an uncertain year ahead. There's no question. We're getting 2020 behind us. I think we're all glad to see it go. Plenty to talk about, I'm sure, next week as we start the new year. Thanks for your time, Clay, and we will begin next year.
That's right, next year. And I've covered one Thunder game on premises, and we might talk about it next time. But I got to tell you, it is a strange experience watching an NBA game with nobody in the seats. But I'll have more insight on that later. So anyway, yes, Happy New Year, everybody. I think the sports world did a great job keeping itself afloat, even at a time perhaps it was never less relevant. but we did need it. I mean, when heavy things are happening, it's good to have our games. But anyway, yes, Happy New Year.
Absolutely. Happy New Year.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks again to our national columnist. You can follow Clay at Clay Horning. Thanks again to all of you. I hope you have a very happy New Year. We'll talk to you again next week.